Stop Skeletons from Fighting turns 4 years old this month, and we're celebrating by having our t-shirts and pins 50% off. Link to the store is in the description below. And since this video is coming out on our anniversary, we wanted to tackle a topic very near and dear to our hearts: cheats. I mean, Stop Skeletons from Fighting isn't something we made up. It's actually a Game Genie cheat for the NES game Castle of Dragon that, yes, does exactly what it sounds like it does. S is the S's from effing. We get asked all the time where the name came from, and now you know. Cheats were a huge part of video games that has largely vanished in the last decade or so. And of course, cheating in competitive gaming ruins the fun for everyone, and that's just as rampant as ever, but we're talking about in-game cheats, not the kind that sells hot sauce. Cheats have had many uses over the years, first used primarily as a way to make games easier. For example, the Konami code, probably video games' most famous cheat, was created so that the NES version of Gradius would be easier for the developers to test. And cheats were also big business. I don't know about you, but I begged Santa for a Game Genie just so I could finally beat Battletoads. The Genesis port of Mortal Kombat outsold the Super Nintendo port by 5-1, purely because of the blood code. There were entire magazines and TV shows dedicated solely to cheats. And as the years went on, the cheats that appeared in games started to get more creative. The peak of cheats in terms of this level of cultural and financial importance was during the swingin' 5th generation, which marked the widespread rise of 3D polygonal gaming. We're not saying cheats ended here, but it was a downward slope from the late 90s to today. And while there are a lot of cheats on the Saturn and of course the PlayStation, we wanted this video to focus on the N64 because, for me, it was the system with the most prolific examples of games, with cheats programmed in by the designers for maximum replay. Banjo-Kazooie, Turok, and of course the landmark Goldeneye and Perfect Dark. So join me, friends, as I dive into my N64 collection to revisit a time when the most popular games were almost as well known for their quote-unquote cheats as they were for the games themselves. Everyone turn to the notes portion of your manuals because cheating starts now. Before we start our adventure proper, let's set the parameters. First, even though our channel is named after a Game Genie cheat, we're excluding peripheral devices like the Game Genie, or in the case of the N64, the Game Shark. We're also not counting ROM hacks either. And this is because we want to look at the cheats the developers decided to include in the game. I think it's fair to consider them part of their vision for the game. If you can put in a password or perform a button combination on your controller, it counts. If you need a secondary device, another time. We're also going to be using the words codes and cheats to kind of mean the same thing, so don't get too caught up in the semantics. All right, are we clear? Is everyone good? Cool, because I am dying to get into this. Let's go. One of the more interesting types of cheats falls under the category of promotional. Nowadays, a lot of this stuff would just be DLC or other online features, but back in the day, developers had to be really clever to up player engagement and to get them to buy into your media empire. A good example of this is also part of one of the largest cross-media empires of all time, Star Wars. Star Wars Rogue Squadron was developed by Factor 5 and released in December 1998. Factor 5 wanted to synergize itself with maybe the pop culture event of that decade, Star Wars Episode 1: The Phantom Menace. There still may not have ever been a movie more hyped. The problem was that Episode 1 was slated to premiere in May 1999, several months after Rogue Squadron's release. So, Factor 5 convinced LucasArts to allow them to include Episode 1's Naboo starfighter in the game, as long as it was super duper top secret. How top secret? Most of the Factor 5 team working on the game didn't even know about it, and didn't find out until it was announced in July 1999. And part of the reason is that it was basically double encrypted behind not just one, but two passwords. You need to input two different passwords, and neither time does the "you put the password in right" noise play. The game tells you twice that you put them in wrong, but if you then check out the hangar, you'll see a piece of the Phantom Menace that was hiding in a game released just 1 month after the trailer debuted. And no one figured it out. Just imagine a Game of Thrones game hiding some final season spoilers in the code. Yeah, you can't imagine that because you could never do that again. Rogue Squadron had another cheat that I love. A car. I mean, this is a car that can hit 12 Womp Rats in less than a parsec. Or Whatever. This cheat just so perfectly captures how dumb cheat codes could be in this era. This isn't just any car though. This is based off of sound designer Rudolf Stember's actual 1969 Buick Electra. And this isn't the only time it was featured in a Factor 5 game. It would appear in all of Factor 5 Star Wars games. That means they must have licensed it from GM, right? Like, someone got paid for this, right? Imagine having that kind of budget. It's just wild. Let's move on to actual Nintendo games, or really Nintendo properties. Nintendo themselves are very against cheats. Most big marquee Nintendo games do not have cheat codes. However, there are a few exceptions, like 2000's Camelot developed Mario Tennis. When we were researching this game for our transfer pack video, we were surprised to see codes to unlock something called the Blockbuster Tournament? Surely not, right? N64? Game Informer? In a Nintendo game? Turns out, in an interesting cross-promotional tactic, Nintendo had a website called MarioTennis.com where players could participate in organized ring tournaments. The way it worked is that a password would get posted online and participants could then enter it in their N64 game. After you played the level, the game would convert your score into a generated code that you could then enter on the website to get on the leaderboard. For a company that would become infamously ignorant about online gaming, it was a shockingly forward-thinking way to build an online community for a console game. I don't know how successful this actually was. Looking at it via web archive, it looks like someone cracked the code for the 9,998 score and spammed it. Hey, that's cheating! But it looks like these tournaments only ran from September to December 2000, culminating in the MarioTennis.com Cup. As far as we can tell, the Blockbuster, IGN64, and Game Informer Cups were never used, but they're in the cart. It's worth noting that these tournaments were cut from the Virtual Console releases, much like its transfer pack content. Further proof that in order to fully enjoy this game, you gotta get the physical cart. But we can't talk about crazy Nintendo innovation without taking a look at the absolute kings, Rare. Specifically, we gotta talk about the Banjo series' ill-fated Stop and Swap. For those unfamiliar, if you were able to collect all 100 Jiggies in Banjo-Kazooie, you would be treated to a special ending that revealed extra unreachable collectibles in the game, and it also doubled as a thinly veiled advertisement for Banjo-Tooie, a game, by the way, they hadn't even started making yet. The absolute melons on these guys, I tell you. Anyway, but what does Stop and Swap actually mean? Well, players would get an extremely long password in Tooie that they could then butt stomp in Kazooie's Treasure Trove Cove Sandcastle. This would unlock items like the Ice Key and colored eggs in Kazooie. Still with me? Because then you could pull out your Banjo-Kazooie cartridge, and because of the way memory worked on the original Model N64s, you theoretically would have a 10-second window to put in Banjo-Tooie and unlock more content in that game. I'm skeptical this would have worked without corrupting a significant number of games and systems, but it never actually got implemented because of the changes made to the N64 in 1999, which would have cut your swap time from 10 seconds down to just 1. The code for it was never implemented in Tooie, though some of the items were included in that game. The actual intended passwords were discovered in 2001 and subsequently published everywhere, and you can even enter them yourself if you have the patience. I didn't do all the codes because apparently if you use more than 2 non-stop and swap cheat codes, Grunty would delete your game, and I somehow still have my original save from high school on there, so I ain't risking it. But now, it's finally time to talk about the big boss of cheat games, Goldeneye. Cheats in Goldeneye are unlocked by completing certain levels on specific difficulties under certain times. You know this. But did you also know that Goldeneye has input codes for every cheat you can unlock, plus a few extras? That's right, you don't have to struggle with finding Dr. Doak in the facility to get the invincibility cheat. You can just put in a code. Plus, there are cheats that can only be unlocked by using button codes. And the best part, these weren't discovered until about 3 years after Goldeneye was released. It started when Rare themselves revealed a button code that unlocked more characters for multiplayer, and then shortly after that, hackers found a whole slew of other button codes. Even after Perfect Dark and Time Splitters had come out, people suddenly had a reason to dust off their old copies of Goldeneye again. That's the power of cheats. One of those exclusive codes was for invisibility in multiplayer. This would have essentially been screen lookers only mode, which would have been really fun if you ask me. Unfortunately, it needs to be put in per player, per life, and requires a very long and difficult string of button combinations. I was actually only able to pull it off once, and even then I wasn't able to also get it working on player 2. If only there was a way I could cheat. Another cheat that isn't unlockable is the pen and ink mode, though there's space on the menu for it perhaps. Goldeneye's pen and ink mode is honestly pretty disappointing when compared to similar cheats in other games, even in other shooters like Turok 2. Pen and ink mode is actually one of the more common graphical cheats in games of this era, but my favorite variant of it is the wireframe mode found in Extreme G because it absolutely tanks the frame rate. Yeah, look at that mess! Extreme G 2 is a bit more polished and its wireframe mode isn't half as crazy, but they included a Tron mode, which is basically like a rainbow pen and ink mode. Looks cool. Of course, pen and ink mode isn't the only graphics cheat out there. Just in my collection, there's tons of examples. Of course, you got bouncy levels. And fun fact, the studio that made this game, Body Harvest, would a few years later make Grand Theft Auto 3. I would have loved the GTA 3 to have a cheat like this. There's also Upside Down, which you'll usually see in racing games, though not exclusively. Space Station Silicon Valley, which was also made by future GTA studio DMA Designs, has it too. Of course, you got more basic graphics cheats, what I like to call the wacky colors cheats, but the game that does it best was also one of the inspirations for this video. Top Gear Rally. Look at this! It's basically an interactive vaporwave music video. Put Studying Anime Girl on top of this and call it a day. I could personally watch this forever. Not all graphic cheats are improvements though. I found several examples of games that actually have cheats that intentionally make the graphics worse. The one that takes the cake though also gets an honorable mention for the pettiest cheat on the N64, Turok's Quack mode. This mode, besides taking a weird shot at Quake, turns the smoke into giant blocks and also cuts out animation frames. Just drink it in. Delicious trash with notes of pettiness. Of course, it's hard to talk about graphical cheats without talking about one of the defining graphical cheats of all time, Big Head mode, aka the mode that makes everything better. That's just science. As far as we can tell, Big Head mode originated in 1993's NBA Jam, which actually was the same year as the Mortal Kombat Blood Code. Whew, good year for Midway. But, while it wasn't the first, the king of Big Head mode is definitely Goldeneye, and its mode, DK mode, wasn't even a pure big head. The inclusion of Donkey Kong arm proportions is something like a Magic Gaming MSG, just elevates the whole experience. Because Big Head mode was so common, we actually wanted to highlight a few games with alternate body horror modes, like Excitebike's Pinhead mode, NFL Blitz's various cheats, which are not N64 exclusive, but still fun, Turok 2 taking a cue from Goldeneye with big hands and feet, Space Station Silicon Valley yet again, and my personal favorite, Top Gear Rally 2, which isn't a big head mode as much as a monstrous, cartoonishly freakish car mode. Just look at how big they are and how they break the camera. Tony Hawk Pro Skater was of course another flashpoint for big heads, though here's something interesting. The N64 ports of 1 and 2 don't have big head modes like their PlayStation counterparts. Like we said at the top, making the game easier is a function of most cheats, and it's also one of the more boring for that reason. However, there are some games with surprises, like Resident Evil 2 64, which, holy crap, Grace, when are we gonna stop finding neat about this port?
Bottomless pit.
It's so good. RE2 64 has an unlimited ammo cheat like most versions, but it exclusively has an invincibility mode, though one-hit kill attacks still kill you, and lets you unlock Tofu and Hunk with a code, meaning you don't have to play all the way through the game to play these modes, and you can play these modes with invincibility and unlimited ammo. Finally, I can take my time with the 4th Survivor mode and wipe out all the zombies in Raccoon City my damn self. And of course, you can't forget one of the N64's most notorious games, Superman 64. With cheats, you can skip levels, meaning I can finally see what this game is like outside of flying through rings. And is it any better? Nope. Still sucks, but at least I get to try laser vision with the mouse controls. But the funnest variant of make game easier cheats are the ones that throw that premise out the window and essentially give you alternate game modes, especially ones that functionally break the game. You can have a lot of fun with super speed cheats in racing games, pushing it to see just how fast it can render itself. The super speed cheat in Extreme G, for example, can be combined with some other cheats to just truly break the game into an incomprehensible thing of beauty. I'm a big fan of spinning modes, which really serve no purpose beyond making the game physically unplayable. my kind of thing. And if that's not your speed, there's also Excitebike 64, which flips the hill mode on its head by reversing it and instead having you go downhill. Or Tetrisphere's line mode, which is basically an extra game mode that introduces an entirely new way to play. And extra content like this is just the tip of the iceberg. One of the most mind-blowing things to me is how many games had extra levels hidden behind cheats. Button Cheat MVP Space Station Silicon Valley has an extra Defender bonus game hidden behind a cheat code, though admittedly this wasn't on purpose. You were initially supposed to unlock it by getting the trophies in all the levels, but a bug that got shipped in with the game prevents you from getting them. So the only way to play this bonus game is with a cheat. Quake 2 64, beyond being a jazzy riff on the PC version for the N64, also has a bonus level accessible with a cheat code, as does Bomberman Hero, kinda. When booting up Bomberman Hero, if you hammer on the start button fast enough during the intro cinematic, you will get access to an all-new area. This is because Hudson Soft had a special controller they wanted you to use. Yes! Hidden content locked behind a third-party Hudson Soft controller. How cool is that? However, if you're a hyperactive dork like me, it isn't too hard to brute force it on a normal controller. There are other games with more general extras, like extra animations, extra sounds, but the award for creepiest extra goes to Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1, which had an exclusive cheat in the N64 port that pulls up a picture of a woman. Like, what? There's a theory that this is Tony Hawk's first wife, but it's extremely creepy the developer Edge of Reality would suddenly decide to put this in here. It looks like a picture you'd see on a milk carton. And they didn't stop there, there's another secret girl picture. What is the deal with the creepy girl pictures, guys? But you know what's a completely appropriate use of a picture in a game? A developer picture, and it's delightful. Look at these guys. Good work, you made a great game, look at them. Though the top prize for extras definitely goes to Star Wars Battle for Naboo. It has the rare, still too extremely freaking rare distinction of being a video game with unlockable audio commentary on every level. This should be in every game.
Of course, if you're seeing this cheat, you've probably already figured out every single power-up in the entire game.
As we've been making our way through all these cheats, I realized I wasn't focusing enough on my favorite ones. The ones that are just stupid, dumb, and unambiguously awesome. From Glover's, let's just say, unique ways of teaching you cheat codes, to just putting dumb stuff in the game like changing your car into something it shouldn't be, to dumb sounds, or just shattering the illusion of the game by taking away the fog that hid how much the N64 was struggling to keep up with you. Also, I still cannot believe I was able to beat Top Gear Rally 2 by letting a drunk driver race for me. It's wild that Turok 3 lets you float like a dumb idiot in multiplayer, and hello, yes, I would like to be a glorified block in a vaporwave wonderland. I think these kinds of cheats are really cool, and I'm a little sad that by and large, developers don't make cheats like this anymore. And sure, there are some modern examples, but they're really rare, and I think there are reasons for that, one of them being that the rise of the internet over the next decade meant it was harder to make money off these cheats. Budgets also went up over this period, so maybe it just took too many resources. While cheats were still pretty common during the 6th console generation, the rise of achievements and trophies in the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 meant that there was actually an incentive to not create cheats, since they could wreck the meaning of getting achievements. And if you look at cheats as something that kept you playing a game long after you'd finished, then really achievements are the direct replacement of that. Thankfully, the modding community has mostly picked up the slack, but while it's one thing for talented fans to break a game, I can't shake the image of a bunch of developers huddled around a computer like, alright lads, I got it. Big heads and arms. Yeah, oh, this is gonna knock their socks off. And maybe I'm alone here, but I miss games that just gave you that level of dumb control. For this video, we limited it to only the N64 games that I own, but I want to hear what your favorite cheats were. What better way to celebrate this long-lost aspect of gaming than by sharing our stories with each other? So let's talk about it in the comments below. This video was supported by our Patreon. Thank you so much for keeping this channel going for 4 years. That's ridiculous to say out loud. Also, it is our anniversary, so hit up the link for some awesome Stop Skeletons from Fighting merchandise that is currently 50% off. Thank you so much for watching this video or any video over the years, and like always, we'll see you again real soon.